Welcome back, guys, to my podcast, Triggered. Today, I have a very special guest here with me in the studio. This is Adam Clausen. He has his own podcast here at the same studios called Gritability, and he has an insanely incredible story, like something I've never, ever heard of. He's overcome insanely incredible obstacles, and I will just have to get right into it. He was in prison serving a sentence of 213 years. From like the age of 21-ish, 20-ish in the young
early 20s.
Early 20s?
Yeah.
Okay, and he was already 20 years, 5 months? Wait.
20 years, 5 months.
And 17 days when he finally got released. So this is an insane story, guys, from beginning to end. He just has this incredible resilience and redemptive qualities about him, and just hearing his story of how he overcame the prison system, overcame, just life in jail, the all these obstacles coming up against you, the gangs in the jails, he developed a love life from the outside, from the inside, and became a fitness guru. It's just really, we really have to take a second here, start from the beginning, and tell this incredible story, because any producer out there listening right now, I have your number one Netflix documentary right here. I'm a documentary guru, by the way. It's my favorite thing to watch on TV. I've been watching documentaries before it even was a thing. I've been watching documentaries before Netflix was even a thing. I truly believe in the story of human overcoming obstacles as like one of the most heartwarming things that you can watch or present or tell. So here you go. Adam Clausen, Gritability, overcoming a 213-year life prison sentence. Adam, I want you to start off and tell me a little bit about, you have a long story, you have a really gripping story, and you're an awesome talker, and I want to kind of hear the beginning. Like, what was it like? You were a young kid, you told me you got into organized crime, and this is kind of how it all started. And tell me what got you all messed up in this, and also help me understand, like, how you wound up in this position. What happened with your life? In maybe like 10, 15 minutes, give me what happened with you. Because the meat of the story is later. We know this. So yes. I want you to give us a backstory, but then we'll get to all the good stuff too.
Okay, so a little bit of that backstory is I wasn't watching documentaries. I was caught up in like pop culture, right? And this is back in the 90s. There was a lot about that glamorized crime, and, whether that was drug dealing, organized crime. I was out there doing all those things. And I had too many people who were like ready to encourage me to keep going down that path, when honestly what I needed was, I didn't have any strong male role models in my life. So I found those in other places. And coming from a family where I didn't feel like I had a lot compared to other people that I was around, I looked at crime as a way to go out and get it myself. So from a very young age, I started committing burglaries, which ultimately escalated to robberies, stolen car rings, fencing jewelry and other things. That's not, nobody aspires to be a criminal, but like I said, back then, pop culture kind of glamorized it.
Yeah. Like Ocean's 11 and stuff, am I talking about? Brad Pitt was like, the number one hot male in like Hollywood is a criminal,
Right. And, so for me, being caught up in that life was more glamorous. And, and once I got started down that path, like other people, it was kind of strange. Even in my youth, there were adults around me who knew that I was caught up in like illegal activity. And, one of those stories is when I was in high school, I got recruited to a college prep, good school, and I was there on scholarship. And the FBI shows up to the school one day, and they're in the lobby looking through yearbooks. And the priest who runs this school, who's the dean of the school, comes out and says, what are you doing here? They're like, oh, we'd really like to talk to one of your students. And the priest says, you got a warrant? They're like, no, we were just hoping we could have a conversation. He's like, until you get a warrant, get the fuck out of here.
Oh my gosh.
And at that point, I'm thinking that they're looking out for me. Mm-hmm. Everybody was protecting their own interests, right?
Yeah.
And, the FBI didn't take that too kindly. Mm-hmm. So eventually, when the law did catch up with me a little while later and I found myself, arrested in custody, the FBI came back and they were very interested, in other knowledge, information that I had related to all of these other, people who were around me at that time.
Give me an idea of what type of organized crime we're talking. Give me the location. Give me a little overview. Paint a little picture for me.
This is late 90s. This is Philadelphia.
Okay.
South Philly mob.
Okay.
And
like the Italian mob.
And that's what they were very interested in. They were trying to build a case and, hadn't had much success doing that.
Yeah.
So they were interested in, anything that I could provide and just being in certain circles kind of put me in proximity. So
yeah, that
started the FBI's interest in me,
okay,
early on. Mm-hmm. And that only over the years progressed and, eventually they got an opportunity to put a little bit more pressure on me.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So that happened and that escalated once you committed a couple other armed robberies. I mean, I don't know how many you committed, but you shared you had quite a sting operation that you were running.
Well, so here's what happened, right? Okay. I actually got more into selling drugs after I got out of prison. So instead of, most kids go to college, I went to prison. So from 18 to 21, I spent what would be formative years, in anyone's youth, coming into adulthood. I spent those in prison.
Wow.
And all of the things that had already been instilled in me were only solidified.
Right.
Right. And
to live this hard life and influenced and surrounded by the same mentality, mindset of everyone else. And when you get out, who are you going to relate to? Who's going to provide for you?
Right. And it's not like those things were made available to me in prison. I got a GED. My peer group was going off to college, and that was my plan.
Yeah.
Get a scholarship to play basketball, and I had agreed to, to go off to college to play ball. All I had to do was graduate.
Wow.
And I couldn't do that. I couldn't stay on track. So I ended up in prison for a few years. And, at that age, nobody...
Did you have a felony at that time?
Yeah, that became a felony. So I get out at 21 years old.
With a felony record?
I'm a violent convicted felon.
Oh, God.
With no real world job experience.
Nice.
No real education. I have a GED, and I've taken spent some time in a carpentry shop. So it's like, what are my options? And I got out there, and if I'm being honest, I gave it a few weeks. I gave it a few weeks, and I show up to, the job site one morning. I'm looking around, and I'm looking at these guys that are twice my age, sipping on their coffee. They're all nursing hangovers.
Oh, Lord.
Most of them have been dropped off because they've got multiple DWIs from, being out at the bar, drinking all night. Like, I'm like, this is my life.
Right.
This is where I don't know what I want to do in life, but I sure as hell don't want to end up like these guys around me. And I literally just walked away. I was like, I'm out of here. Got my car, drove off, and I met up with some of those people that I knew from before I went to prison.
Okay.
And they're in the city. They're right in the mix of things. This is the late 90s, 97, 98, cocaine, ecstasy, ketamine. It's like free flowing. It's like, oh, well, here's a bag. You want some?
Yeah.
And it's like, well, damn, this is a whole lot better than sitting back there with those miserable SOBs, on a job
site.
Not
making any money, sitting around drunk. Okay.
Yeah. So, and that opened up the door to being at the center of everything. And from the outside, people looked at my life and they're like, wow, you got it made. You got all these drugs. You got VIP access everywhere. Like, life is good. Like, you're doing it. You're in the middle of everything. But to be honest, like I was so empty. I was so lost. And like that took a toll. You know, all of my relationships were like fleeting.
Yeah.
I wasn't really connected to anybody. And I realized that, you know, listen, I had a lot inside of me, a lot of trauma, a lot of damage that I certainly hadn't addressed.
Yeah.
I wasn't ready to address. So I just kept covering it up with the drugs and the alcohol. And I kept running full speed, figuring that, you know, eventually I was just going to break through somewhere and, you know, get away from all of my past.
Yeah.
And maybe get a fresh start.
Yeah.
And I felt like maybe that's what I was running toward, although I didn't really have a destination in mind.
Yeah. And then that was when you got caught up in the big busts, right?
That's when I got caught up in the big bust. Well, what happened was I was on parole.
Okay.
Believe it or not, I'm on state parole, committing all of this illegal activity.
Nice.
So
You're a risk taker. Do you gamble? Are you a poker player? You should be, maybe.
right, I should have been. I was down at Atlantic City plenty during this period, right?
Well, you're in Vegas now.
Yeah.
There you go.
Would you believe I've been in Vegas 3 years and I haven't placed a single bet?
Really? Good for you.
Not
That takes a lot
once.
of constraint. I've lived here for 4 years and I haven't placed a single bet. I mean, I have friends that come to
Wow.
town and such. Gambling isn't really my thing. I don't know if I just don't love risk or if I don't love losing. Maybe both. Who knows? But yeah, I can relate to you on that one. It's a sin city that I haven't committed all the sins in.
Right? I like to weight things in my favor as much as possible, and I'd rather put my money on myself
Yeah.
than, you know, blindly put it someplace else.
I like that. That's definitely a new strategy. You must have learned something behind bars.
Hopefully, yeah, picked up a little bit over those 20 years, you know?
Nice. That's good. Okay, so now we need to know. Okay, so you have this big bust when you're on parole. It was another armed robbery or something like that? Is that what happened?
No, it wasn't just one.
Okay.
It was a whole
series.
bunch of them. What happened was I'm on parole. I have to go in for drug tests. And, you know, that whole experience, to anybody that's never gone through that, one, to be on any sort of supervision, it's like someone's always got their foot on your neck. And whenever I would have to go in and report, it was like, I just expected, like, they're going to lock me up.
Okay.
And maybe that's me, like, subconsciously, it's like, wow, you're doing all this illegal stuff. Eventually it's going to catch up to you. So they violate me for dirty urine.
Okay.
Tested positive for, I don't even know what it was. Who knows? It could have been a multitude of things, right?
All right.
And they immediately send me into the county jail,
Okay.
which this is a county jail like what you would see on TV.
Okay.
It's Camden County in the 90s when it's like the murder capital of the
geez.
world.
Wow.
It's just a
Brutal,
violent,
scary.
brutal place. But I walk in, and fortunately, like, I know a lot of people. And so, as sick as it sounds, like, it wasn't that difficult for me.
Okay.
Because people knew me from the state prison and my past.
Okay.
So, you know, 90 days doesn't sound like a lot, but I realized how fragile my existence was because my whole world got turned upside down. And when I walked out 90 days later,
Okay.
you know, they called me unexpectedly. They're like, Clausen, pack it up.
Yeah.
And you're like, what?
What?
Grab
Freedom?
my bedroll. Like, I'm out of here. It's
Let's
like,
go.
see you later.
Yeah.
And I roll out. And at the time, you know, I remember walking out the back door. They're like, yeah, we lost all your clothes, all your possessions. Everything that you were locked up with is gone.
Yeah.
So here's your flip-flops. Here's your bus pants, which are basically like medical scrubs and a T-shirt.
Yeah.
It's January. It's January on the East Coast.
Nice.
It's like 20 degrees, literally 20 degrees outside. And they're like, oh, don't forget this. Here's a bill for the cost of your incarceration.
Oh, really? Thanks. I'll be sure to get right on that.
Right.
Okay.
So I'm like, yeah, crumple that up. You know, like, what, like I'm going to pay that. And I take off down the street. I get to the corner. I get to the local McDonald's, and there's a McDonald's worker. I'm like, hey, can I bum a cigarette? I need to make a phone call. She's like, you just got out of the county jail. I'm like, it's that obvious,
Yeah.
right?
Can you tell?
So make a phone call, call one of the guys that I was locked up with, you know, just tell him, hey, I'm out. He's like, I'll be right there.
Wow.
comes to get me. And, short story is that over the next 3 weeks, I committed a string of robberies. Ultimately, I was charged in federal court with 9 of those robberies.
Wow.
But there were others. Drug dealers, other, in my young, immature mind, it's like anybody that's in the game who's involved in illegal activity.
Yeah.
Like, you're part of this life.
Right.
Like, whatever happens is, a natural consequence of being involved. That's my young, immature thinking, right?
Yeah.
I deeply regret all of the people who were, affected by all of those robberies, everything that I did. I feel really bad about that.
Yeah.
But at the time, that's not how I saw things. My perception was all messed up.
Yeah.
Right? So I commit this string of robberies, and eventually, something goes wrong. And on that fateful night, February 26th, 2000, so very beginning of 2000, SWAT team's there, and it's, man, the laser sights through the windows, and it's like they're on the bullhorns, and I'm like, damn.
Yikes, it's going down.
And it's, I got to make that decision. It's like, am I going to try and get out this front door, go out guns blazing, and just, say F it?
Yeah.
Like, I'm not going back to prison.
Yeah.
Or do I try and get out of here another way? Do I try the old Kaiser Sose, like, unusual suspect, blend in with everybody else and just slide out? Because remember, there's like, this is multi-floor place. There's all kinds of people here. Difficult for them to distinguish who's who.
Yeah.
Cops don't know.
Yeah.
And I'm banking on everyone else who's here, who's not supposed to be here,
Yeah.
keeping their mouths shut.
Yeah.
And that probably would have been the case.
Yeah.
Except that guy that I called to come pick me up,
Yeah.
first opportunity he got, he was talking.
Really?
Yeah.
To get himself out.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow.
Yep.
So he turned you in.
Yeah.
Wow.
And things quickly started unraveling. And he was quick to tell them, like, listen, I have information, regarding drug trafficking.
Wow.
With links to organized crime.
Yeah.
And I'll talk to the DEA, the ATF.
And he was part of this, or he organized
Yeah.
this, and he got out.
He was he was part of this. He ultimately got out, was in the witness protection program.
Wow.
And eventually washed out of the witness protection program, committed another string of crimes, and is now serving a life sentence in California.
That's insane.
Under a new name.
What a karma.
Yes.
What an insane karma right there.
So I don't really feel bad about that. But.
Yeah, of course not. And as we talked, because we talked at length, you shared with me you've never sold anyone out, and you've been questioned and challenged many, many times for your own personal freedom to sell people out and to sell out the organized crime, and you never were willing to do that.
And early on, like, my belief was, like, you just don't do that. It's a principle thing.
Yeah. Because it was like, was it more of a brotherhood mentality, or just like a loyalty thing, or just you felt like there was some guilt and shame with that?
It's more or less, it's just like a code, like a way that you choose to live. And my thinking was, like, how am I going to put somebody else in the same situation I'm facing?
When I'm also accountable?
Right?
Yeah.
Like their family, everyone around them. I know what they did to my family. Like, they threatened my family. My family lives in the Midwest.
Yeah.
And they told them all sorts. They made up crazy stories to cut them off from me, to separate everyone from me.
Yeah.
And I'm like, how am I going to do that to somebody else?
Right. That takes insane amount of like courage, loyalty, authenticity, because you could escape, you could potentially lessen your sentence or remove your sentence by putting other people under fire, and for it to have that level of authenticity is insane. I really respect that about you, for sure. And okay, so now you're in, now you get busted through this situation, and now you're at some point, I don't know what the time frame was when you realized, when you're on trial and they gave you the sentence of the life in prison, or 213 years, because you were saying they added the armed part of the charges to every single charge, which ended up adding more time somehow.
It was actually, because of the firearms.
Yeah.
It was the way that the prosecutor chose to bring those charges. They could have charged me one time with a firearm for all of the underlying robberies, or like they instead did, they charged it with each individual robbery. That's not normally how they do it. They did that to leverage that time over me and say, listen, if you lose this, like you're never, ever coming home.
So question, they charge with each one of those things with the armed robbery. There was something I was going to ask about that. And you told me about that before. Obviously, it would have been serving a lot less time if they hadn't done that to you. Were they doing that to get you to give them information about the organized crime? Was it just to make an example out of you? Like, clearly, you didn't hurt anyone, right? Nobody was actually killed or injured or hospitalized because of your actions?
Correct.
Okay, so yes, it was logged under a violent crime, but
it's still serious, still violent. Believe me, like when you're kicking indoors and sometimes tying people up.
Yeah.
Like that's a reality.
It's still traumatizing.
I'm not proud of any of that. It is. It's definitely got to be traumatizing for everybody involved.
But what I'm saying is they were able to, knowing even, like you're doing a life sentence, which people that are lifers, I mean, I'm sure you're well versed in it. But usually it's like murders, multiple murders, like things like that. And you're serving a life sentence alongside them without having killed or harmed somebody. Yes, it was classified as a violent crime, but I mean, it seems like the punishment is not meeting the same crime.
It was definitely excessive, without a doubt. And I think, to your point of kind of when all this came down, like I knew they threatened me with this from the beginning. And when I looked in the law books, I'm like, wow, all right, they're not just talking, like this is real. They can actually give out this time.
Yeah.
And they basically told me, my attorney came to me and was like, listen, doesn't matter whether or not any of this is true. Mm-hmm. You're in a position to say this. Mm-hmm. Like drug conspiracies are very easy to say, yeah, I got drugs from this person or I gave him this, like very easy. And, there's a lot of talk on the news right now about conspiracies. So it's kind of starting to hit people's radar.
Finally. I feel like I've been following those for years.
It's crazy. And that they have the ability to convict somebody on basic hearsay, right?
Okay.
And that's what my attorney came to me. He's like, listen, you're just in a position where you could say this. Mm-hmm. And that's what they want to hear from you. I was like, it's not true.
Yeah.
He's like, well, it doesn't really matter. Mm-hmm. I'm like, well, I'm not going to do that.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm not going to say anything, but how could you even bring something like that to me? Needless to say, that attorney who was trying to set me up and get me to cooperate ended up in federal prison himself.
Wow.
He was actually working with the feds. That's a whole nother side story.
Wow, so much karma you're revealing in your life.
And it gets so deep, like you realize that, man, like when you're around people that are doing negative things, like you never know like how deep those layers go.
Right. Yeah. Well, you can tell when the intentions seem off. Like if you're not trying to criminalize me for, if you're going after me for another reason, maybe an ulterior motive, maybe a personal motive. So, okay. So you realize you get the 213 years. You're what, like early 20s? And now you're like, you just have to go into the mindset of, do you immediately think I need to assimilate to prison life? Are you already thinking of escape strategies? Are you in a depression? Are you dissociated? Like what's happening?
D, all of the above.
Okay. Makes sense.
So it really is. It's a combination of all those things. You hear about, U.S. penitentiaries, the violence, all of those things. I was sent to a level 6 penitentiary. Like it's the most secure you can get without being a lockdown.
Yeah.
A lot of famous gangsters, spies, mafia, like you name it. And here I am at 24 years old.
Damn.
213 years.
Wow.
So I remember when I got brought in, I get off the bus. I'm the only one that gets off the bus, the transfer bus at that facility. They put me in the cage and they have to do an intake interview anytime you come to a facility. Like, can you be on the compound here? And I'm like, yeah, I'm good. And I remember this guy looking at me and he's like, really? He's
like this fresh chicken? Like,
he's like, you sure you're ready for this?
Oh my God.
I was like,
do I have an option?
I was like, I'm good, man.
Yeah.
And he's like, okay. Now, they turned me loose, sent me on the compound. And literally before I even get to my cell, I have one of the guys, he's like, hey man, come through. I'm smoking weed, drinking homemade wine, getting the rundown on this place. They already knew who I was. They knew my background.
How did you get weed and wine? What do you mean weed and wine?
Weed and wine. That's like they're more prevalent in prison than they are
Are you
on the
serious?
street. Yeah, it's
Damn. Okay.
it's ridiculous.
That's kind of what's up. If you're going to do time, damn, pass me a joint or something.
That's what I'm saying. So I didn't even make it to my cell. I still have my bedroll. And I'm, in another guy's cell, and he's giving me the whole rundown. And he's like, hey, man, we keep the knives here. He's like, here's a knife.
This is like your inmate, like initiator, like your orientator.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's pretty much how it works.
Wow. Okay.
So, and that's how my time in a USP started. And here's an example. Like, I come into it with the mindset of I'm a young guy with a lot of time, and I need to prove myself early on. So I just came at everybody really hard. And, it's funny, people talk about playing sports in prison, like basketball, prison rules. Like, it really is.
It's like that.
It's really like that. It's hyper aggressive. And I thought they were playing with me.
Yeah.
Because one of those guys that I first met from Boston, a lot of guys from Boston were up in the Northeast, and he was like, hey, tomorrow night, man, hockey down in the gym. I'm like, yeah, okay. He's like, no, seriously, man, floor hockey. We play every Sunday night. I'm like, yeah, okay. He's like, I'm being dead serious. Like, you better come down. I'm like, yeah, okay.
Can you do that? Make your own schedule there? Like, kind of create your own little, like, times and games and stuff? Do you have the freedom to do that?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, there's, like, down in recreation, there's leagues for sports.
How much time do you have a day that's recreation? I don't know.
Honestly, like, an environment like that, it can be all day, every day.
Okay. So you do kind of have a lot of time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like, back then, you were supposed to be assigned a job.
Okay.
But it's like a job where you don't have to show up, you don't have to do anything. It really depends.
Yeah. Okay. So then you have this hockey. I don't know. You were going somewhere with that.
Going somewhere with hockey. So I go down there on Sunday. It's actually Sunday afternoon. We go down there, and it's like, primarily all the white guys from the Northeast, that grew up playing hockey. And it's like, man, here's your stick. Let's go.
Was it like a white gang, or like what was happening there?
No, it was like, well, you had a couple of different groups. Like, obviously, all the guys from Boston are real tight.
Okay.
So that that group, they all run together.
Okay.
Which is something you definitely want to take into consideration if you're out there playing hockey. You put a stick upside, the head of one of the guys, realize that all 30 of them are immediately going to turn on you.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, there's that hanging over your head. So it's like a fine
Was that initiation
line.
for you to see if you could be part of the group?
Partially.
Yeah.
I mean, everything's a test, right? Like, especially when you're new, like, people are watching you, filling you out. They just kind of want to see where you're at.
Sizing you up, see if you're good for them. Or...
Yeah.
Okay.
So I come out there, again, just hyper aggressive.
Really?
And
you don't seem like the aggressive type. You must have...
I'm not. I'm very laid back at this point.
I mean, I can imagine it. 24 in jail.
Yeah.
So, okay.
You are what you have to be.
Yeah.
Right. And that's what I felt. And believe me, I had a lot of pent up aggression.
Yeah.
Still hadn't dealt with all of that trauma from
you
my
were ready
youth,
to take it
past.
out on the next guy, the next group of guys.
Yes.
Yeah.
Any opportunity I could. So I come down here and just unleash it. And this is the first, afternoon time that I'm down there playing, and I'm just going hard. I didn't grow up playing hockey. So I'm not one of these guys that can, like, some of them can handle really well. Like, it's like the ball is glued to their stick.
Yeah.
That's not me.
Yeah.
I'm just going directly at them. And they're like, yo, man, like, watch the cross check. Like, you can't do that. I was like, oh, well. And I kept doing this, and the ball goes around behind the net on the back wall. And there are these two I-beams, right? Because this is it's a gymnasium structure, right?
Yeah.
And on this back wall, there's pads on the wall. So if you're playing basketball and you go past the pad or past the basket, you hit the pad on the wall.
Yeah.
Well, these I-beams come down to the floor. So the ball that's rolling around behind the net, and I go chasing after this guy, and I hit him. He bounces off the wall. I slide along the wall, and that I-beam connects with the center of my skull.
Uh-oh.
I've got a pretty hard head.
Yeah.
But it's not harder than
no. Did it leave some
split
damage?
Me wide open.
Dang.
Split me wide open. I take off. I keep running. They're like, whoa, time out. I'm like, no, I'm good. They're like, dude, you are not good. They're like, you're bleeding. You're bleeding pretty bad. I reach back, and I remember I looked at my hand. I'm like, yeah, that's pretty serious. So, and I still, to this day, I have a groove in the top of my head.
Did you have to go to the hospital and get some stitches, or?
Well, see, that's the thing. You know, in prison, they don't really take you to the hospital unless you're dying.
Okay.
But
so they'll stitch you up right there on the spot.
They have an infirmary.
Okay.
So they send me down to the infirmary, and I'm like, I don't even know where it is.
Yeah.
They're like, go out there, walk down the compound. They're like, the guy in the tower, because they have a tower on the yard. Guy's up there, you know, shoot down in the yard if needed.
Okay.
And he slides a window open. He's like, oh, my God. He's like, that's pretty bad. He's like, I wish I could take a picture of that. I'm like, thanks.
Yeah.
I was like, where's medical? He's like, just keep walking.
Can you help me out? I'm bleeding from my head.
So I get down to medical, and there's 2 women down there. And I presume that they are both medical technicians, doctors, whatever. And the one woman asked me, wow. She's like, that's pretty bad. She's like, do you mind? She's like, can I stitch you up? And I'm like, you're asking me. Why are you asking me
to stitch you up?
She's like, because I've never done it before.
Oh, wow.
And I'm like,
oh, that makes me feel amazing. In that case, the answer is the other person that's available.
I was like, yeah. Have you ever done it? She's like, she starts laughing. She's like, yeah. Come to find out, she's not an MD. She's the psychiatrist.
Okay.
So, and she honestly wanted to do some stitches. And I was like, no, that's okay. However, the other woman, I probably should have let her because she might have done a better job.
Yeah.
You know, there wasn't really any consideration. So my hair on the top grows a little crazy because they just kind of pulled it together. Yeah. And I still have the groove.
Threw it together.
Yeah, that was basically like my initiation. But as soon as I got the stitches done, I went back to the gym.
Yeah.
I went back to the gym. I was like, hey, I'm back. Like, put me back in. And they were like, what the
This guy's hardcore.
This dude's crazy. So,
nice.
And that was just one of the initial...
One of many initiations into the culture of jail life.
Yes.
Wow. Okay. I'm sure you have a million of these stories because you were there for 20 years, 5 months, and 17 days. So you have a lifetime of like documentary content. Hello, producers. I'm telling you, Adam Clausen right here is amazing to talk to. I find it fascinating, and you've shared on your podcast about the story with your wife and how you met her, which is insane because you didn't know her before going into jail or prison. You didn't even know anyone that knew her.
No.
So please share with us this fascinating story because I don't know how to wrap my mind around all the complexities of it because you got the true love story, you got the like you didn't know each other, you couldn't touch each other. For how many years? Was it 11 years?
11 years. And that's the first question everyone wants to know, like, what about sex? Like, there was no sex?
We all of us fantasize about conjugal visits. So let's be real. If you haven't fantasized about a conjugal visit, who even are you? Like,
right?
Have you lived in this world? So to think that that's not real or that, it's mind-boggling to us, especially knowing that people are carrying on long-term relations or even starting long-term relationships in jail.
How do you start a long-term relationship in prison?
You are the master class of how to start a relationship
I want to be careful
from
there.
maximum security prison.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
How do you land the woman of your dreams while serving a life sentence?
Yes, please tell us.
Right?
We're eager to know.
That's what everybody wants to know.
Yeah.
Without sex.
Without sex.
Damn.
Nice.
So
that's a master class right there.
It definitely is.
Yeah.
And honestly, it comes down to one thing. It's communication.
Yeah. But like, you guys got that. You guys got a golden relationship. You guys have to watch their podcast, Gritability, because Adam and his wife, Ro, are on there. She's beautiful. She's amazing, inspiring. And I can see this deep connection. I think the one thing that I picked up from watching your podcast is that obviously you have a deep connection and a respect and just this like, you were able to develop a deep relationship maybe because of the limitations. Like you had to get to know each other. You had to wait. She had to wait around to see you either once a week or once a month over the course of years. And so it's like that loyalty, that connection, that dedication, the perseverance, like those things were needed for you guys to be together. Like there was no question. You had to be committed. You had to be loyal. You had to be patient, so you can see that in that. And so it's almost like a true love story because I've been in a relationship where it was long distance. And I guess I would compare it to a long distance relationship because you were apart. At one point, she was living in a different state or 6 hours from you.
6.5 hours for 10 years.
6.5 hours for 10 years. And she was still spending her time working a full-time job, driving to you on her weekends, I think, packing up the car.
Like every other weekend for 9 months out of the year.
Oh my gosh. It's just the amount of dedication and loyalty is insane to me. Like I can only relate to the long distance relationships that I had where I was like, you communicate over the phone, you do email, maybe a little texting, whatever. But, that is a huge barrier. And it's like, I think you guys even said it on your podcast. It's like we're like the Love is Blind story. We're proving that love can exist without touching, sex, always seeing each other, always being able to do these things. So in that essence, it's like such a love story. And it's kind of like motivating and inspiring for us because in our world, outside of prison, everything's like instant gratification. Everything's I can touch you, I can text you, I can sleep with you, I can not sleep with you, I can sleep around on you. I can do anything and everything. And that freedom, sometimes we take it for granted and we self-sabotage because there's another person waiting, another person we could talk to. We can see it. It's like we take that for granted and we embellish? No, we indulge in the superficial things because we can't, there's so many superficial things. Whereas with you, and I know you guys said in your podcast, it's such a deep relationship that it was worth the wait. It was worth the patience. It was worth going through maximum security, like pat downs or all the things she had to go through. So I'm curious about let's hear the like initial story. Like how did you get her in prison to meet you anyways? Like what was that? How did that happen?
Well, even before we get to that, I believe it's that anticipation that really builds appreciation. And in a prison relationship, like you spend a lot of time waiting and just for those moments that you do have. And it gives you a different sense of gratitude.
Yeah.
But even from the very beginning, I think what was different was, and I'll speak for myself.
Okay.
All of my prior relationships were like, there was no real depth. If I'm being honest about it, like the women that came into my life were the ones that I met while I was selling drugs, while I was out, in the clubs and the bars and all of those things. And, it was based purely aesthetics.
Yeah.
Initially. I mean, like
party life.
That's how it started.
Times.
And if there was any conversation beyond that, it was like, okay, that's a bonus.
Right.
Like, where is that really going to lead to?
Yeah.
So for the first time ever, I was getting to know someone just via email. We got connected through the email.
Okay.
And, it was just questions back and forth.
Yeah.
And really listening. And I found myself like eagerly anticipating her responses. Like I couldn't wait to hear, what she had to say and to learn something new about her.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, this is a whole new experience for me. And so it very quickly evolved and there was a different depth and a different connection.
Yeah.
And although this is even before we had spoken on the phone.
That's insane.
Right.
Or seen each other.
Never seen each other.
So the beginning was just email exchanges.
Yeah, the beginning was there, a guy comes in, big bodybuilder, runner-up, Mr. New Jersey. At this point, I'm like the fitness guru because my whole existence in prison or my identity revolves around what I do with health and fitness.
Nice.
I'm, training other people, running group classes, all these things. So this guy comes in and they're like, go see Adam.
Yeah.
You guys are both from Jersey. You're both into fitness. So he comes up and, you know, he's eager to tell me all this. And like within the first couple of days, he's like, hey, my girlfriend's going to be coming up here all the time. And, you know, she's got a cousin. And I was like, listen, I'm not interested. And he looks at me like I'm crazy. He's like, what do you mean you're not interested? I was like, I'm cool right now. He's like, what are you, a freaking monk? Like, what do you mean?
What else are you going to do with your time? I
was like, listen, I was with an ex, a girl that I had been with through high school, like bad times. The relationship was toxic.
Yeah.
And I held on to that because I was serving a life sentence.
Of course.
You know, whatever connection I had to the outside, those were things I was holding on to. And I came to the realization, I was like, this is so unhealthy. It's toxic for me. It's not good for her. And if I were to get out tomorrow, like, would I really be with her? Like, we're on two totally different pages at this point of our lives. And I'm like, you know what? I got to cut this off. Obviously, that didn't go too well. She's like, what, you're cutting me off?
You're
You're
jail.
the one serving a life sentence. What are you, crazy?
Like the worst breakup ever.
Probably, right? But so anyways, we cut that off. And honestly, like, I was so relieved. I was like, man, for the first time, I'm like just comfortable in myself and, you know, who I am. And I'm doing all this introspective work. I'm like, I am good.
Yeah.
And that's when this guy comes to me and I'm not really interested.
Yeah.
So it's after like a couple times, he's like, listen, man. And he's told me a little bit about her and he was, you know.
Did she have like a bad boy, like prison fetish? She's like, I need one of those lifers, man. I'm just kidding.
There are, those exist.
I mean, there might have been a bad boy fetish to start, and then you came in with the Prince Charming.
Yeah, no, this wasn't her. Like, she honestly, and my wife's the first one. She'll tell you, she's like, I wasn't interested in talking to some guy in prison, right? She was like, what the hell would I want to do that for?
Yeah.
But you know, on the other end, her cousin, this friend, keeps wearing her down. Like, hey, just talk to him. The premise of this, right? Completely self-serving. That couple wanted like to have partners in this.
To have partners in this like weird relationships drama. And now they have people they can talk to about it, someone to drive up with.
To take the trip.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
That's all it was about.
I'm sure.
They didn't give a shit about us, right?
Yeah. I mean, they didn't know you were going to be a Netflix documentary series that they'll probably be like, hey, remember us?
Yeah. So, you know, her and I start finally exchanging. We're like, okay, emails, we'll do this. And for both of us, it was kind of reluctant. Like, we were just both coming out of bad relationships. We knew what that was.
Just right timing, right situation, you know?
Ideal all the way around.
Open, you both were able to come into open mindsets and like take
no expectations, right?
That's true. There's no commitment issues right there.
There's nothing. I'm serving a life sentence.
Yeah,
it's like,
okay,
where can this go?
You want to come say hi to me? Let's chat. I'll tell you stories. Like,
yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. I mean, you guys could just right there do series on like, you know, what you would talk about, what you look forward to. How do you boost a relationship, or how do you make it foster it? How do you make it exciting? How do you know, all that? I mean, I've heard the ending, so I already know like the juicy stuff. But, you know, okay, so you're in jail, and at some point, how many years in is she like, okay, we're really committed? I mean, you're doing the whole life sentence thing. That's great. But let's like not do that, because that kind of complicates my life now.
A little bit.
Just a little bit. So when did she like, okay, I got to spin these wheels. I got to talk to some people. We got to get you out. Like, when was that? How did that transpire? Because she was pivotal in finding the right moving pawns and characters to get you there.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah.
Like, I would not be here without her.
Wow. That's fascinating.
On so many different, I wouldn't be who I am.
Yeah.
And the whole chain of events that allowed us to have this life wouldn't have happened without her, you know, being the one advocating on the outside.
Absolutely. But Adam, give yourself credit, because I will say you have to stay in that fight. You did a fight for a long time to keep your head in the game. Even 20 years, you can give up plenty of times along the way. Give up on yourself, give up on your future, give up on her. there's this phrase that I wanted to bring into this podcast. It's actually from the Bible, but it's a quote that a lot of people use. It's called "Hope deferred makes the heart sick." And it basically means if you hope for something too long, like if you make me wait for my future husband for 20 years, I might not believe you anymore. Like, you know what I mean? Like if you make me wait for my baby that I want to have and it's been 10 years, I might break down and stop trying. Hope deferred makes the heart sick. You chose not to give up hope in so many hopeless situations. Like 20 years is a long time. You went from 20 something to 40 something, and tolerating all the drama that comes with that. You have to have a level of calm. You have to have a level of patience. You have to have a level of trust in her or your attorneys, the law, like all these moving pieces to not get discouraged. And then on top of that, you're surrounded by surroundings of non-hope, right? You're around everyone else who's not going to get out and they're serving life sentences, and maybe they're in your ear. Maybe they're telling you you're not going to get out. Maybe they're convincing you don't want to be out. That's a lot of obstacles to overcome. So you have a character that helped you get out. Like if you wanted to give up at any point, you could have, or not believed in your attorney, not believe in her, or tell her, you know what? I don't want to ruin your life. Let me just back off. There's so many levels of like pain or obstacle that could have prevented you from letting it happen or believing in it or trying in it. Because at the end of the day, we can only empower ourselves as much as we can empower ourselves, right? People can help us, but they say like, you can't bring a horse and make him drink water. Like you were pivotal in this too. You had to believe in it. You had to have patience. I'm sure there's pieces you had to do, right? So give yourself a little credit. I mean, yes, your wife, yes, amazing, amazing, amazing love story. And I actually want to meet her. She sounds really cool. We got to do a double date. But this is like, you know what I'm saying? Like you had to have the patience and belief in yourself that this was going to happen. Because you share with me, and maybe you could share a couple of incidents where you thought you weren't getting out and what happened there. Maybe like you could share that there was like the appeal story and there was some other barrier. I can't remember what you said that was, nope, you're not getting out. Nope, you're not getting out. You said there's only like two ways to get out, right? It's either the appeals process or it's getting pardoned by the president. Are those only two ways? Or three ways? The law is getting changed, but they have to be retroactive.
Yes.
So there's three very massive barriers.
Good memory.
Thank you. Maybe I should go to law school. Okay, I'm gonna start getting people out on early release, immediate release in your case. Yeah. I'm the new Kim Kardashian. Let's go.
That would be a heck of a career change.
Hey, you know what? I'm all down for it. I mean, now that I know how crazy the criminal justice system, I mean, I already knew our court system was insane. Just the small experience I have with it, dealing with my ex and his drama, and how things can get like, you can criminalize someone forever or you can expunge things. Like it's insane, the court system and how it all works, and it scares me. But just hearing your hero story, your overcoming story is like, wow, okay. There are people that can make changes and we can help in that. So yeah, you dealt with trying to get the appeals process, which is a forever process to appeal your convictions, right? And that turned you down. And that was how long of a process was that?
Well, the appeals process from the time I was convicted, sentenced, which was in between 2000 and 2001. By 2005, my appeals, in the federal system, you get one set of appeals. One chance
to make it from the smallest court to the Supreme Court.
And that's it.
And that's it. If you fail that, you're not going to be able to appeal this process again.
Yeah, you're done. Okay, you're done. And that's where there's so much confusion, because state courts operate a little bit differently. And what you see on TV is, people continuously going back to court over the years. Federal system is very different.
It's insane. And when you shared it with me, and you're like, okay, so you have the appeals process. You went from the smallest court, working your way up to the Supreme Court, and they did not grant you your appeal. They shut you down completely?
One page. It was very unceremoniously. I received it, and it wasn't legal mail. It came with the regular mail. They called me, 4:00 out. They're like, Clausen, you got mail. I go up and I get it, and I'm like, there's no way. Like, this can't be it.
What did it say? Denied?
Yeah.
F yourself? Like
denied in bold.
Oh my God.
Like no opinion, no.
So you started it in 2005. How long was the appeals process? Was it a year or two?
That was the end.
Oh, that was the end. So you started in 2001.
2001.
So it was like a 5-year journey of trying to get out. And that this is out of those three things: the appeals process, the president pardoning, and the laws retroactively changing and reversing. That was your best chance, and you got denied.
That was number one.
That was number one chance. And now you're like, okay, now we got to go hit up whoever's president right now.
Now it's Congress. We have to convince Congress.
Yeah.
Which we know how well they get along, right? Convince them to give someone like me, a repeat violent offender, to give me another chance.
Right.
Very unlikely. Like that's politically.
Do they take personal cases like that?
No.
They don't, right?
No, but they'll generally, there's always a face, right? Like we like to put a face on something, which surprisingly, I am now the face of compassionate relief.
You're the face?
I spoke to Senator Cortez Mastro's office this morning.
Wow.
About compassionate release, and I've spent a lot of time in DC since.
Yeah.
Where, like, now I proudly wear my background. Like, yes, I'm the repeat violent offender, the one that everyone points to say, you better not give this person a chance.
Yeah.
But I'm the example of what is possible. All that potential that resides inside when you give people some sort of hope, give them something to hold on to.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Congratulations on that. That's amazing. So the appeals process went denied. You told me the next phase was to appeal with get it on the president's desk and see if he can, and you told me the story. I think it was Obama was not in office at this point.
He was. Do you remember who his vice president was?
Biden.
Joe Biden.
Oh, our favorite. Yay.
So.
But did they help you out? Who signed off? Obama? No, you didn't get it.
No,
you didn't. I was going to say, did Biden sign off on you? No, you didn't get it.
No, he did not. And funny story. We go through this whole process. My mother and my wife are out front of the White House, candlelight vigil, can do clemency, this whole clemency project. President Obama's like, you get clemency, and you get clemency. There are these lists that come out every few weeks without warning, without notice. And there's hundreds of names.
Wow. Is this only happened like one time during presidency?
This is the only time in history that this has ever happened.
Presidents don't do this. They don't
ever do this.
Wow.
Like they give a handful. Each president will do like at the end of their term when they
just to make themselves look good. Oh, here you go. Let's let a few people out.
No, it's usually for their friends.
Oh.
They do it for their friends.
Okay. They use their power just to like, okay, this is what I can do while I'm in office.
Yep. They can either issue a pardon, which means it's erased, or they can commute a sentence.
Okay.
A sentence like mine from 213 to 20 years, to 30 years, whatever they choose.
Yes.
They have that authority.
Yes.
So here we are. We know that this clemency lottery is going on and they're giving them out left and right. But then these other lists come out. Denied, denied, denied.
No.
So the anticipation when a list would drop.
How many were submitted and how many were fulfilled?
Over 10,000.
10,000 submissions?
I think there was 11,000 initially. You know, that number ballooned to 25, 30,000, whatever it was.
Yeah.
And there was a whole process in place. But mine was one of the few that got some serious support, made it all the way. It made it through the U.S. Pardon Attorney Office, which is like the first major obstacle.
Mm-hmm.
It gets through there. It gets passed on. There are 8 layers to get to the president.
It's anxiety.
Makes it all the way through.
Are you like a Buddha? Like, did you just meditate in jail all the time? Like, I am not anxious about this process.
You learn to deal with the stress. And let me get back. I'll tell you an example of that stress. But anyways, it makes it through the layers. We find out that it makes it to the White House. Mm-hmm. It's got to get past the vice president.
Yeah.
And it died on Joe Biden's desk.
Oh, hell no.
Because he didn't want to sign off on it.
Maybe he was taking a nap or...
He might have had some other political aspirations at the time. Like
anything.
Maybe he was thinking about running for president.
Thinking about finishing a sentence. Like...
and listen, in all honesty, I'm a political liability, right?
Yeah.
Like for someone to put a signature on a piece of paper saying that you're going to give me a chance, looking at my history, my background on paper.
Yeah, but they also have 10 to 20,000 to look at. How closely are they really looking at your record? I mean, they're probably
when it gets down to the ones that are granted, yeah, there was an in-house team, Jared Kushner.
Oh wow.
There were people very close vetting those.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, mine did not make it.
Denied again. That's strike two. That's strike two.
I'm sorry, not Jared Kushner. That was the next administration. There was a whole team around Obama who was vetting these to get them there.
What year is this?
2016.
2016. So we went from 2005 denied to now 2018 denied. Your wife is still with you.
Yeah.
Bless her heart.
That was a hard one.
Yeah. Because the best case scenario was the first chance. This is the second chance. Now the only chance left is for us to figure out someone to change the law for you, particularly, and then get it retrogradely. Because you even said most of the time, even when they get a law change, they don't retrograde change it so it removes the sentence.
No, it's generally prospective, not retroactive.
Oh, retroactive. Okay, that's the word I was looking for. Okay, so, but now you have an attorney that's down for this job. Did he bring this idea to you? Did you bring it to him?
Interesting. So my attorney happens to be someone who knows my situation very well because he did some time in federal prison.
Yeah.
He robbed 5 banks.
Wow.
So very similar situation, but he was only charged with 1 gun.
Oh, okay. So he knew.
So he knows the law intimately.
About that specific crime.
About that specific law. He gets out, goes to law school, becomes a very well-known criminal defense attorney who gets recruited by Georgetown Law.
Wow.
To become a law professor at Georgetown.
Yeah.
2018, the First Step Act.
Yeah.
Against all odds.
Yes.
No one thought that President Trump would be the one to lead landmark criminal justice reform.
Wow.
Which he did, and my attorney, frequent guest at the White House, helped to craft that legislation. 2 important things happened.
Okay.
That gun law that I was under, he was able to point out that disparity and was instrumental in helping to get that change so that no one can ever be charged the way that I was charged ever again.
Yeah. Wow.
Problem is myself and a few thousand others who had already been sentenced were not affected by it. So we needed to find another way. So we made one other small change, and it's to the compassionate release for extraordinary and compelling reasons.
Okay.
The problem is nobody understood what that change was once it happened. So he had to go to the national media. He had to go to all the legal publications. He basically had to convince the whole world of what had just happened and that it was another way for someone like me to get into court.
Yeah.
We used my case as the example, wrote a motion, put it out on the internet and said, anybody that wants to use this, feel free to use it, submit it. I'm telling you, you can get into court. We can get relief.
Oh, so other people in jail were using you to get themselves released.
Literally, they filed the motion with my name still in it.
Wow.
And thousands of people were granted relief. Meanwhile, I'm sitting in prison 2 years later, going like, hey, Sean, like, isn't it time? Like, let's do mine.
Yeah.
But he was very, very intentional in building a record of easier cases. Again, I'm a political liability, like to get a judge to sign off. And ultimately, we file mine. And I vividly recall coming out to the computer, my emails, and I pull it up. I'm like, oh, I got a message from Sean. He's like, call me. And I just felt it.
Uh-oh.
I'm like, he's not that terse in his response. I'm like, there's something. I was like, and it was late at night. So I had to wait till the next morning to call him.
Yeah.
And it weighed on my mind all night. I'm like, I know what this is. I know it's the U.S. Attorney's Office.
Oh my gosh.
So I pick up the phone, I call him in the morning, and he's like, hey, I have to run this by you.
Yeah.
I was like, don't say it. I already know. Like this, it's his obligation as my attorney. He has to share this with me. He says, I got a call from U.S. Attorney's Office, Bob Zausmer, and he said, the only way that they will entertain this motion is if you agree to cooperate.
Oh,
now, mind you, I've served 20 years.
You're literally in jail because you didn't want to corroborate. Like, what the hell?
And at this point, remember, 4 years ago, we went through the whole clemency thing. Huge letdown not to get it.
Yeah.
My family, my wife, who wants children, I want children.
Oh my gosh.
Our entire future, everything that we envision, comes down to this. And honestly, the only reason they wanted me to agree to cooperate was to get me to tap out. And it's just to concede, like,
Why?
you're giving in, you're not going to beat us.
Really?
Yeah.
It's just a power move?
They
didn't even care to,
listen,
it wasn't really someone they were trying to catch in organized crime?
No.
It was 20 years ago.
20 years.
Like, you're not.
That was all done.
That's not the
they
same
tied
people.
up all those cases
People.
already.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, wow, it was a power move.
It
And you, I forget what you did. What did you do? You are a rebellious little shit. You're not going to go with whatever.
It was very much on principle.
Yeah.
I was pretty upset. I was pretty angry. I was like, man, not to even bring this to me.
Yeah.
And he's like, I have to. I'm like, well, you already know the answer. I was like, absolutely not. And as soon as we hung up, I'm like, oh, I got to tell my family. I got to tell my wife. I got to tell my mother, my dad. Like, so this is what happened, because I'm transparent in everything I do, and I want them to just, be aware of what's going on. And man, that was hard.
Yeah.
My wife responded. She was like, no, absolutely. You did the right thing, period. My mother.
She said you're doing the right thing.
She did.
Wow, she's a ride or die. She's a real one. She's like, you know what? I'm just going to keep this fetish strong. This whole jail thing, I'm just going to ride this out. Oh, man, poor
but
soul.
But she knows that's like,
that was to you the values that you have.
Central to who I am.
Yeah, it's your values. Like, you can't just randomly change it. So.
And there's a lot of people who can say, you can even say to yourself how you would like to respond to a certain situation, but until you're there, until
all the consequences up close and personal,
and your life is literally hanging in the balance, and all the people that you love, like
that's
their lives.
That's a lot of consequence, and that's a lot of responsibility.
Heavy.
Yeah. So what now?
Well, at that point, it's like, okay, like we keep pushing, like we feel that we have sound legal grounds. We're going to push this thing. And ultimately that's what happened. My attorney, no one better on this planet to advocate for me. Yeah. Like, we're close personal friends. He had a similar case. Like, he's done all the work with the media. He's laid the groundwork. He, gets the day in court, goes in there to the judge, convinces the judge, yes, you have the absolute authority to do this. The judge vacates my sentence, which means I no longer have 213 years. But
oh my God,
he doesn't give us a new sentence. He doesn't say, well, like, hey, you're free today.
Yeah.
No. He was like, I'm going to schedule another hearing, bring you back here, and we'll talk about how much time
I can give you.
He will get.
Wow.
So now it's like, whew, I take half a breath. It's like,
I can kind of hold it.
I don't know what to do with this. And thankfully, we didn't have to wait long. We get back in there for a sentencing hearing. But the judge opens up the hearing by saying, so why shouldn't I give you 30 years?
Oh, God. And you have to answer for yourself?
No, I'm not there.
Oh, thank God.
I'm not there.
I mean, I wouldn't want to answer that question for myself.
My attorney's there, and he jumped right on it. Again, like, there's no one better equipped.
For you, yeah.
So he jumps on it, and, they go through the argument. Now, what's happening behind the scenes is that same prosecutor who said that they would not agree unless I cooperated, when my conviction was thrown out, he came back and he said, listen, we don't agree with the legal grounds, what the judge did here. He goes, but since he did it, we're not going to oppose whatever sentence he feels is right and just. We agree that we think if he has the legal grounds to do this, that he's done enough to, to win, to be awarded a second chance, and he served enough time. Wow. So we're not going to appeal it. We're not going to oppose it. Wow. Now, to get them to agree up front and to then go on the record with the judge and say, Judge, whatever you want to do, we are not going to appeal it. Now the judge
That's what your attorney said? Or both attorneys?
That's what my attorney, that's what the U.S. attorney.
Wow.
So that's a complete 180, right? Comes back and says, okay, we're not going to get involved. Judge, whatever you want to do. And judges need that
Authority.
because, they're worried about being overturned on appeal.
Yes.
So the judge now has it completely like in his hands, and he says, okay, I'm going to let you know what my ruling is. I'll get back to you.
Jesus.
Go home for the day. And it's like, what?
Oh my God.
It's like, now we got to wait. And listen, there's no time limit. Like, he doesn't have to give a ruling within a day, a week, a year.
Right. You don't.
He could sit on this for years.
As long as he wants. Yeah.
So now we just got to wait.
So
you want to talk about stress.
I think you're like, you're my mentor when it comes to being ghosted. Like, you can handle like unlimited amounts of ghosting. Anyone out there suffering from ghosting, I struggle with it because I live in the day and age where you should text and call me back, and I get pissed if you don't. And you're over here like, I don't know when the fuck I'm gonna be told when I can go home or not ever again. So I'll just sleep on it for an unlimited amount of stressful days and nights.
Oh, believe me,
Oh, buddy.
it's one of those things that you have to endure.
Yeah.
Right? Is it clearly not by
Yeah, but
choice?
it takes that mental strength. You could break down. I'm sure
True.
you've probably seen people in jail break down or go into a psychosis.
Self-sabotage, yeah.
You just,
Without a doubt.
your mind creates that narrative in the story,
Mm-hmm.
and you can't sit with unknown. You can't sit with uncertainty. I think that's one of the biggest struggles that we humans have, is not being able to sit with not knowing the outcome, not knowing what our life's going to look like. The unknown scares the shit out of us, and we panic, and that's why there's so much anxiety and depression. It's because we don't do well with not knowing the things. Like, we need to know the things. We need to fantasize about all the things.
Well, and that's why it's so important to be able to visualize what it is that you do want.
Yeah.
And we spent a lot of time getting very specific on what our future was going to look like.
Yeah.
And saying, listen, whether it happens tomorrow, whether it happens a year from now, like, this is what it's going to look like.
Yep.
And we will make this a reality. And we had accomplished enough things, like even from in prison, to know that like that was our reality. Or like, we've already done all of these things that people told us were impossible. We've done those individually. We've done them together. Like, this is our final hurdle.
Yeah.
All I have to do is get out the door.
Right. And you built a tolerance over the years
Yes.
of, I can tolerate disappointment, I can tolerate punishment, I can tolerate what I don't like about my life. You built a huge tolerance. So for you, it's just like, okay, are you going to disappoint me one more time? Like, sure. Okay, I've been here, done that. Like, what the hell?
And it's knowing that there's always another option, right? One of the things that I'll say about that stress, building that up over time, the best way to describe it is being in prison. There's like a frenetic level of energy because there's so much stress in that environment. And for the person who lives by the high power lines, right? If you've ever been near high power lines, like, you can hear them buzz, like, it's loud, it's audible. Somebody that lives right there, you're like, why the hell would you buy a house right here? Like, doesn't that drive you crazy?
Right.
And they're like, I don't even hear it.
Right.
It's white noise at this point. Very much the same thing.
You start to tune things out and get in your zone, and
You tune them out. You learn to live at that frequency. I'm not going to say that that's healthy,
yeah.
but you figure out a way to do it that is better than allowing it to become debilitating.
Right.
Not everyone can do that.
No.
So again, like you said, we were equipped at this point. We had built up a tolerance. That's a good way to describe it. So that those last couple of days, I'm going to say they were bearable.
Right.
But when the news finally came that, yes, I was granted immediate release, which in this case meant within 72 hours, granted this immediate release, like, it almost, like, there was hesitation on my part.
Yeah.
I'm like, is this for real?
For real, or we just,
Like, after all these years, like, it's real now?
I got denied a bunch of times, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Wow. So when did it hit you? And it hit you when your wife pulled up in the car? Or were you in the car and you're like, oh my God, I'm driving away? Like, were you kind of dissociating for a little bit? Like,
It wasn't, I described we drive away and we're like eager to get away from the prison.
yeah.
So we're driving away and we get out to the front, and we had always talked about taking a picture, shooting a video at the sign out front, at the front of the property, out by the main road. And she was like, oh, do you want to stop? And I'm like, there was like some hesitation. I was like, no, let's do it. So we get out and we go over there real quick, and we took a picture, and it just popped up on my feed the other day. And I'm like, oh my God.
Oh my God.
I look so sick.
Yeah.
I look so unhealthy. I look like I've just been, liberated from a concentration camp.
Damn.
And
because you came up on your anniversary recently, right?
I did.
You were released how many?
3 years.
3 years ago recently, right?
3 years ago.
Congrats. Holy crap.
Thank you.
You seem so happy and upbeat and uplifted. Like, Adam, you don't carry the weight. You carry the wisdom of someone that's been in jail for 20 years, but you don't carry the weight of the jaded mentality and I kind of hate the world. I don't know. That's what I would expect someone to feel and act like. You act like you're the most abundantly happy person that I've ever met. Like, if I met you outside at the coffee shop without knowing your history, I'd be like, damn, this guy's just like an upbeat, happy, married, happy guy. Like, no problems here. Like, no criminal record over here. You know what I mean? So it's just so crazy how you've taken life back or found your power back, your light back, something you took back, because that could have beaten the power or light out of you, So do you feel like 3 years out, like, wow, this is my life. This is what I envisioned. This is happiness. Like, is it still kind of surreal? Like, is it like I'm living two lives now, or I don't know.
I work at making sure that I give myself credit for those successes, because I'm very critical of myself. Like the same. I guess those practices that I had to adopt on the inside to continue to just keep pushing forward, like those things served me very well.
Yeah.
And they continue to serve me well on this side.
Yeah.
But I don't always, stop to give myself credit.
Right.
I'm grateful every single day for what I do have in my life. Like, I live with a whole different perspective. And I have nothing to be resentful of.
Right.
Because I choose to focus on, I gained everything through that time in prison.
Right.
And listen, I did what I did. Like,
yeah,
I was wrong.
Right.
Like, I deserved to be in prison. I needed to be in prison, as crazy as that sounds,
yeah,
to find myself.
yeah,
And I wouldn't have found nor been able to cultivate the relationship that I have with my wife had I not gone through that experience.
So you have that gratitude for even the
Yes.
punishment you did. You're like, okay, the crime, I did something bad. I did deserve to be punished. I did deserve to serve. That you have that humility, which I think is probably why it makes you so light and airy and happy. Because people that carry grudges and resentment around in their life, how could you take all that time from me? Whatever it is that they're carrying, right? It's a grudge of some kind. It's resentment. You don't have that. And so you exuberate happiness and lightness. It's like you can live your life now. You can actually enjoy your freedom. Whereas someone else might be stuck in a negative mindset, and that's still holding them back, and they're actually still in prison because they're living there. They're not living here. So it's really like super exciting to see this. And you have like part 2, like part 3. We could chat many, many more times on this show, and even go over and check out his show with his wife. If you haven't already, Gritability. It's a fascinating story. And like I said, Netflix, Hello, Hulu, whoever's going to pick up on this first, because it's truly a fascinating story. And even just like your first, when you tell me you and your wife, you get out and I think you said it was in the middle of quarantine, and you get straight, you had to quarantine at the prosecuting attorney's house. Like, those twists and turns in your life are just so hilarious, and yet ironic and also humbling. I don't even know how to describe it, but it's almost like the good karma follows you. Anyone who had bad karma, it kind of, your life has exhibited that bad karma can follow bad karma and good karma can follow good karma. It's really, that's to me what's fascinating and cool to see. So, and do you have anything to add? I mean, we could just talk for hours.
If we could. And this has been a lot of fun. Like, you've given me a lot of different
Really? What kind of things?
and
What insights have I
perspective.
provided? Because I always wonder when I have people come on the show, am I just making them tell their same story again? Because
No.
I hope to either produce some perspective or help someone see themselves the way I see them. So what would you comment?
No, you've done a great job of giving a different perspective on that. Like, the good karma follows, the good people, and the bad karma follows those bad people. Like, those are different aspects of my story that I guess I'm aware of, but I don't really think about those. But it definitely rings true. And there's just a number of times during this interview where when you were summarizing some of the aspects that I had told you, where you allowed me to see it in a little bit different light.
Really?
So yeah.
Tell me one more. I want to hear this.
Going back to which part? All of the aspects when I was talking about you did a great job in summarizing my wife.
Mm-hmm.
And
I watched the whole podcast with you too. It's fast. You have to watch it. I can't possibly share the story without you seeing the interaction between you two talking and sharing the lead up to it and her reaction and both of the expressions on your face and you're just so engaged in this love story. You're reenacting a love story, so to speak. And so I really felt it. I felt part of your journey. Not even knowing you guys outside of the couple times we chatted, but I could feel it. I was like, this is real. Like I can see what happened here.
And it is. I mean, it's easy to get caught up in my story and everything that I went through, but to focus on the love story, which is really at the heart of this, because you're right. And in pointing out, there was a lot that I had to do. But man, like everything that she did and to hang in there. And to continue to believe, like it was very challenging for me to over time cultivate that belief in myself.
Right.
And I think that's where most people struggle, like to have an unwavering belief in yourself, in your abilities, like to know that, hey, I'm going to do this. I'm going to make it out of here. I will have a life outside of here. And then when there's someone else counting on you, that responsibility, like to carry that weight as well.
Right.
That's a lot.
That is a lot.
But from the other perspective, like,
yeah,
she chose to come into
she
this.
did.
Like,
She's committed. She's in it to win it, man. And you guys did. 3 years out with a baby boy, right? You guys have a 2-year-old.
A 2-year-old, CJ, absolutely amazing.
Oh my gosh, how's fatherhood? Is it the best? Do you like it?
It is. It's everything that, again, it's one of those things you can say how you want to respond to a situation, but until you're there.
Yeah.
And I always envisioned how I would like to be as a father.
Yeah.
And I get to live that every day now very intentionally.
Wow. That's so cool.
Man, life is good.
That's amazing. Thank you so much, Adam, for sharing your story with us. And is there anything you want to share with anyone else? I mean, we'll check out your podcast, Credibility, and we'll see your future Netflix documentary, Hulu, or book. You, at the very least, if you need a book, you need to go on Oprah. Just do a small little media tour if you can. I just appreciate that. Just shout back and be like, by the way, I was on Lauren's show first.
You heard it here.
You heard it here.
This is where it came from. Extraordinary and compelling.
Thank you. You are. And your story. Well, thank you for sharing. And guys, tune in later for next week and we'll have more amazing guests and stories. Thank you.